The global trade landscape has been dramatically reshaped in recent years, with the United States under the Trump administration imposing significant tariffs on goods from various countries, including Vietnam. This new wave of protectionism has sent shockwaves through the global economy, raising concerns about a potential trade war and its ramifications for businesses and consumers alike. Vietnam, a rising economic powerhouse in Southeast Asia, has found itself directly in the crosshairs of this trade dispute. The decision to impose tariffs on Vietnam, a key U.S. trading partner, has sparked intense debate and analysis. The Trump administration argues that these tariffs are essential to protect American jobs and industries from unfair trade practices. Critics, however, contend that such protectionist measures will ultimately harm American consumers and businesses while undermining the global trading system. The imposition of these tariffs marks a significant escalation in trade tensions between the United States and Vietnam, two countries with increasingly complex economic and geopolitical ties. The outcome of this trade dispute has far-reaching implications, not just for the two countries involved, but for the future of global trade and the rules-based international order. The following sections will delve into the rationale behind these tariffs, their potential impact on the U.S. and Vietnamese economies, and the broader implications for the global trade landscape. The Trump administration has justified its decision to impose tariffs on Vietnam by citing concerns over unfair trade practices, including allegations of currency manipulation, intellectual property theft, and the transshipment of Chinese goods through Vietnam to evade existing U.S. tariffs. These actions, according to the administration, undermine the competitive landscape and create an uneven playing field for American businesses. The administration claims that by rerouting Chinese products through Vietnam, companies are effectively bypassing the tariffs imposed on Chinese goods, which were intended to protect American industries from unfair competition. The White House argues that these practices give Vietnamese businesses an unfair advantage over their American counterparts, leading to job losses and economic harm in the United States. This has resulted in a significant number of American factories shutting down, leaving many workers unemployed and communities devastated. Central to the Trump administration's argument is the issue of Vietnam's trade surplus with the United States. This surplus, they argue, is a clear indicator of the imbalance in trade relations between the two countries. In 2024, Vietnam's trade surplus with the U.S. reached a record $123.5 billion, a figure that has raised alarm bells in Washington. This unprecedented surplus is seen as a direct threat to the economic stability of the United States. This growing trade imbalance, according to the administration, is evidence of unfair trade practices that necessitate a strong response. They believe that without intervention, the situation will only worsen, further harming American economic interests. However, critics of the tariffs argue that they are a blunt instrument that will do more harm than good. They contend that such measures are overly simplistic and fail to address the underlying complexities of global trade. They point out that Vietnam's trade surplus with the United States is partly a reflection of the global supply chains that have developed in recent decades, with many American companies sourcing components and finished goods from Vietnam. This interconnectedness means that tariffs could have unintended consequences. Imposing tariffs, they argue, will disrupt these supply chains, raise costs for American businesses and consumers, and ultimately harm the U.S. economy. The increased costs could lead to higher prices for everyday goods, affecting the average American consumer. The decision to impose tariffs on Vietnam is part of a broader pattern of protectionist trade policies pursued by the Trump administration. These policies are aimed at reducing the trade deficit and protecting American jobs, but they have sparked significant debate. These policies, which include tariffs on goods from China, the European Union, and other trading partners, have been met with criticism from both domestic and international observers. Critics argue that such measures could lead to trade wars, which would be detrimental to the global economy. Vietnam's economy has experienced remarkable growth in recent decades, transforming itself from one of the world's poorest countries into a dynamic, emerging market. This transformation has been nothing short of extraordinary, with the country achieving significant milestones in a relatively short period. This economic miracle has been fueled by a combination of factors, including a young and growing workforce, which has provided the necessary labor force to drive industrial growth and innovation, a strategic location in Southeast Asia, which has made Vietnam an attractive destination for foreign investment and a crucial player in regional trade, and a commitment to economic liberalization and integration into the global economy. This has included signing numerous trade agreements and opening up various sectors to international businesses. However, the recent imposition of tariffs by the United States threatens to derail Vietnam's economic progress. These tariffs have created a wave of uncertainty and concern among Vietnamese businesses and policymakers. As a major exporter of manufactured goods, including electronics, textiles, and footwear, Vietnam's economy is deeply intertwined with global supply chains. Vietnam is highly vulnerable to disruptions in global trade. Any significant changes in trade policies or tariffs can have far-reaching consequences for its economy. The United States is Vietnam's largest export market, and the tariffs imposed by the Trump administration could have a significant impact on Vietnam's economy. The reliance on the U.S. market means that any disruption can lead to substantial economic repercussions. According to some estimates, the tariffs could slash Vietnam's total goods exports by up to 40%, a staggering figure that underscores the potential severity of the situation, and shave 1.2 percentage points off its economic growth in 2025. This decline in growth could have ripple effects across various sectors of the economy. The tariffs have already begun to impact Vietnam's stock market, with the benchmark VN index falling by nearly 14% since the announcement of the tariffs in April 2025. This decline reflects the broader economic anxieties and uncertainties. The tariffs have also led to concerns about job losses in Vietnam's export-oriented industries, which employ millions of Vietnamese workers. The potential for widespread unemployment is a significant worry for the government and the people. The tariffs imposed by the United States pose a significant challenge to Vietnam's economic model, which has relied heavily on exports to fuel growth. This model now faces a critical test. The Vietnamese government has responded to the tariffs by seeking to diversify its export markets, looking towards other regions to mitigate the impact, and attract more foreign investment. By creating a more favorable business environment, Vietnam hopes to draw in new investors and reduce its dependency on any single market. However, the long-term impact of the tariffs on Vietnam's economy remains to be seen. The coming years will be crucial in determining how well Vietnam can adapt to these new economic challenges and continue its growth trajectory. The Trump administration's decision to impose tariffs on Vietnam is rooted in its America First trade policy, which aims to protect American jobs and industries from foreign competition. This policy has been a cornerstone of the administration's economic strategy, emphasizing the need to prioritize domestic production and reduce dependency on foreign goods. The administration argues that the tariffs are necessary to address unfair trade practices and level the playing field for American businesses and workers. They believe that by imposing these tariffs, they can correct trade imbalances that have long disadvantaged the U.S. economy. However, the tariffs have been met with skepticism and criticism from some quarters, including economists and business leaders, who argue that they will ultimately harm the U.S. economy and American consumers. Critics suggest that the increased costs of imported goods will be passed on to consumers, leading to higher prices and reduced purchasing power. Proponents of the tariffs argue that they will encourage American companies to bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States, boosting domestic production and creating employment opportunities for American workers. They believe that a resurgence in American manufacturing will lead to a more robust and self-sufficient economy. They also contend that the tariffs will generate revenue for the U.S. government, which can be used to fund infrastructure projects or reduce the budget deficit. This additional revenue is seen as a way to invest in the nation's future and improve public services. However, critics of the tariffs argue that they will raise costs for American businesses and consumers, leading to higher prices for a wide range of goods, from clothing and footwear to electronics and automobiles. This could result in decreased consumer spending and a slowdown in economic growth. They also point out that the tariffs will disrupt global supply chains, forcing American companies to find new and potentially more expensive sources for their products. This disruption could lead to inefficiencies and increased operational costs for businesses. Moreover, critics argue that the tariffs will harm American businesses that rely on exports to Vietnam, as the Vietnamese government is likely to retaliate with tariffs of its own. This could lead to a decrease in demand for American products abroad, further hurting U.S. businesses. This tit-for-tat escalation of tariffs could lead to a trade war, which would be damaging to both the US and Vietnamese economies. A prolonged trade war could result in significant economic losses and strained diplomatic relations. The long-term consequences of such a conflict could be far-reaching, affecting not just the two countries involved, but the global economy as a whole. In recent years, Vietnam has made significant strides in asserting its position on the global stage. From economic reforms to diplomatic efforts, the country is pushing back against external pressures and carving out its own path. This determination is evident in its growing economy, strategic alliances, and a renewed focus on national sovereignty. As Vietnam continues to push back, the world watches closely, recognizing the potential of this rising nation. As tariffs continue to shape international trade, many industries find themselves at a crossroads. The impact on businesses and consumers alike is becoming increasingly evident. Are we witnessing the unintended casualties of these economic policies? With tariffs in place, the cost of goods for American consumers has been on the rise. From everyday items to larger purchases, the financial burden is growing. How much more are we willing to pay, and at what cost to our economy? The dynamic between the US and Vietnam is evolving, heralding what could be a new era in trade relations. As both nations seek to strengthen their economic ties, what opportunities and challenges lie ahead? In the ever-changing landscape of global trade, uncertainty seems to be the only constant. Companies and governments alike must navigate these turbulent waters with caution and foresight. What strategies will ensure stability and growth in this